Before we get into today's podcast, I wanted to tell you guys about PicDrop. PicDrop is an image transfer tool I've been using personally for over 5 years now. It's how I send all my photos to my clients, and I can create custom galleries online, which I can access on my laptop, mobile phone, on the go, where I can download files. It's just a really intuitive platform that was actually designed by photographers with photographers in mind. So they really understand what photographers need when they're delivering photos to clients. And they're constantly updating the platform with new tools and things you can use to just kind of streamline your workflow and make it easier when sending your photos to clients. They have a cool new Scribble tool. So if you're working with a retoucher or a client, they can make notes on your photos and really just make it easy to communicate with your client and keep everything in one spot. I can't recommend it enough. It's just, for me, it's a lot better than some of the more outdated platforms like WeTransfer and Dropbox. It's just a very specific transfer tool for photographers in mind. So with today's podcast, with the promo code BANTER, you'll get 2 months free of PicDrop. All you got to do is go over to PicDrop.com, enter the promo code BANTER, and you'll get 2 months free. So definitely go give it a try. Let me know what you guys think. And without further ado, we'll get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Photo Banter podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gagne, and on today's podcast, I welcome on photographer Frank Jackson. Frank Jackson is a photographer based in Los Angeles, California. And on today's episode, I speak to Frank about how he first discovered his passion for photography, his experience traveling the world as IBM's corporate photographer, as well as his approach to lighting. Frank is a photographer who isn't constrained by a particular subject matter or theme, as he photographs everything from studio portraits, still life, and his everyday life, but are all guided by his passion for lighting. I also speak to Frank about his experience photographing iconic photographer Gordon Parks. Frank is a true artist and someone whose work I greatly respect for his ability to turn any object or just everyday life into art. It was a real pleasure getting an opportunity to speak with Frank about his journey with photography, so I hope you enjoy, and thanks so much for listening. All right, and now welcome on Frank Jackson. Excited to talk to you, Frank. Kind of recently connected through our mutual friend, Stefan Vanasco, so I was excited to talk to you about your journey with photography and everything you've done. But I guess to start off, man, like, where'd you grow up and, like, how do you kind of first discover photography?
Um, I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and my parents, um, when I was 3, they decided that they needed to get away from my where we were, which was in Florida, Jacksonville, and they came to California. You know, it was 1959. I was 3. Yeah, 1959. I was 3, and we came to ended up in Richmond, California, which kind of is the armpit of Northern California. I would call it. As a little kid, I could still remember it. It reminded me of um another East Coast city. Northern California back in the 60s, late 50s, like Oakland, reminded me of parts of Brooklyn. You know, it was a real, like, it was a grocery store in every corner, you know. There was no, you know, no big supermarkets were not close, and you know, you walk to school and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I remember we were in Richmond for 2 or 3 years, and then every time my father got a better job, we moved to a better neighborhood. We went from Richmond to Oakland, and we were in 2 different houses in Oakland. And then my father got hired by IBM, and he shot up in the company like a rocket going to outer space.
What'd he do?
And he started repairing the typewriters and equipment, you know, for them. But my father was actually quite brilliant. He could read and write music. He was always making stereo equipment from scratch and soldering stuff. I think one of the jobs he had was working on fighter planes for the Navy at Alameda Air Base. I think he repaired the electronics. And there was always what are those, the things where you test voltage meters and soldering irons, and there's sheet music and, you know, and, my father was always, doing several things at one time, you know, and, but, um, he was, my experience with my dad was my father was there, but I, we weren't close. It wasn't like he came home from work and I ran and, Daddy, it was none of that.
Mm.
But that was normal to me, and that I say that now because later on it kind of matters on how I ended up. But eventually he got hired because after the March on Selma, Alabama in 1965, we marched for voting rights. The international news was there. Let me back up a little bit. What happened was Martin Luther King had a secret meeting with the organizers of the march, and basically he told them, if you're gonna march, it has to stay peaceful. We can't fight back. He said because they'll massacre us, And he said TV cameras will be there. So it was epic. I mean, you can go on YouTube and find the films, and it actually changed. The U.S. government actually signed the Voting Rights Act, and they had one of the things I think was they told companies if you hire minorities, you'll get tax breaks. And my father got into IBM because of that, and he shot up in the company within 3 years. Within 3 years of getting hired, we went from Oakland to a very nice, really nice house in Sacramento. It was like going to Long Island
Yeah.
from Brooklyn. It's like, in my house in Oakland, the yard was you could cut the lawn with a push mower, in like 4 strokes.
Yeah.
And this house had this house had let me hang on. This house had, let me get this thing out of the way. Here we go. This house had a huge lawn front and rear. I mean, and it worried me because, we had a push mower, okay, for Oakland. And, I had to cut the lawn. I had to help. And I think my mother and father, this was 1965 when we got there. And within 3 years, they separated. And my father got transferred out of the city. So my mother was single with us. And, I had to cut that lawn by myself. So she bought, I mean, this is crazy. She bought a electric lawnmower with 100-foot cord.
Damn.
Okay. And it worked. I mean, it was cool. I never cut the cord, so I never had a problem there. Anyway, my father, weirdly enough, was always trying to find new hobbies. And he bought this high-end German Kodak camera. And I used to pose me and my sister, and he was always shooting. He was shooting a lot of slide film. And this camera was it was pretty, I never got my hands on him when he was around. When he split my mother, he stopped taking pictures and left the camera.
Mm.
So, I had been trying to draw, and I realized you had to have, I realized that no matter how much training you get, you're never going to be good at something if you don't have any natural born talent.
Yeah.
Next level talent, you got to be born with that. That's got to be a skill you get lucky and discover, or you just, you see, and then you do the work. You do all the work, and then as I say in sport, you have a talent for a sport, and then you find out you can be trained, as opposed to the other stuff. And so I picked that camera up and I put film in it, and I'm running around taking all these pictures. And I didn't know the camera wasn't working.
Mm.
You know, it's like it's like getting a record player and you want to sing a recorder and you hit record, you're like, oh, this is gonna be a great song. You sing, so at the end of the day you realize it didn't work, you record nothing. So after a while I realized nothing worked. And eventually I ended up once I realized the photography, and once I realized I couldn't draw with, I was awful at drawing. I found out when I got a camera that worked. My neighbor across the street had been in Japan in the service and went to the PX and bought. They were selling Pentax, Asahi Pentax cameras, you know, and those were cheap, you know, for the U.S. guys. And it was actually pretty cool. There we go. It was just pretty cool. He said, "I don't use this ABC. I'm not going to give it to you, but you know, might as well be yours." So I asked for it back, and he had Asahi Pentax made nice glass. It was a 50 millimeter 1.8 and a zoom lens. And Tri-X film back then was, you know, 99 cents a roll for 24 and $1.50 for 36.
Damn. Dude.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was, you know, for a long time, film was like,
Yeah.
it was cheap, you know, and even got cheaper if you processed it yourself, you know. So I got that camera, and then one of the guys' dads had a darkroom he wasn't using, and the thing that scared me was every time I learned how to process film, all my pictures came out.
Mm.
They always came out, and I hardly knew what I was doing. And
What were you taking pictures of?
whatever I wanted, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was going. I mean, I was doing night stuff. I didn't know how. I was doing night pictures. Guys, you know, the basketball court was on. The guys were playing ball, and the pictures were coming out.
Mm.
You know, I was screwing around trying to get Tri-X to work, you know, and then push poshing and all that stuff. And then I realized, you know what? You got something. You need to find out how to stop being just lucky and learn the skill. You're gonna have to do the work. So I started reading books. I found out about photographers, looking at magazines, and I was fascinated by and how does the light working on this? And then I realized I had a talent for seeing light.
Mm.
And so the first thing I did was I took an egg and I put it in a window, and I would watch how the sun moving in the window would change the light on the egg and shape it. And then I'd take pictures of it at different times of the day, process the film, and try to make a print. And I'd hold the picture of the print of that about that time, so it had the same shadow in the same area, and see if it looked close. And that's how I learned photography and understand lighting. And you know, you don't control the sun, you learn how to be friends with it. And you know, eventually I start being, you know, trying to unbaffle myself about flash, you know, on camera flash. And I figured that out later. I figured out studio strobe before I figured out on camera flash.
Damn.
Because by the time I came around, I ended up buying I always bought good light meters. You know, I'm jumping forward fast. I actually skipped the story about how I started understanding what different cameras were, and this was how I've been shooting for a while. And I ended up being a manager at a hamburger stand, and this was about 1972, 73. And there was little bad kids around the neighborhood. I used to give them food to keep them quiet, and you know, and they said, "Hey, we know you like taking pictures, man. We found this case with cameras in it." And I was like, "Oh, so let me see what you got." So they came by the next day, and it was an old Japanese camera. I don't remember what it was, but it was maybe a Kowa or something,
Mm.
medium format camera. The other camera was a Hasselblad.
Damn, this sitting there.
And I was going, "Oh," exact words.
Yeah.
How much you want for this funny looking box camera? He wants $75. I was like, here. My boss, my boss's partner was the chief of detectives in Sacramento. And so he said, let me run the number, you know, to keep you from getting in trouble for buying something hot. And I got to keep it,
Nice.
you know, and It's it was it was I was like, wow, it was a 500C chrome in pretty good condition, a very good condition. Whoever bought it was a photographic aficionado. You can always tell those cameras, they don't use them. they just they just it's like a dream car that you buy, you wash it, you never let anybody sit in it, you don't let anybody eat in it, and you never drive it,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it goes bad because mechanics machines have to be used. And it had I didn't know at the time, Gossen, the light meter company, made a knob that replaced the regular film advance knob, and it was a whole meter, a selenium cell meter, and they had that on there in the waist level finder, and I walked around with that thing, man. I was shooting pretty decent pictures with it. It was, you get used to the waist level finder, and I had that camera, man. And then um, the other camera ended up getting was the other camera ended up getting was Olympus had just come out with um, the smallest 35 millimeter camera system, OM1, and it was like you take a Nikon F without the mountable thing on it, really small, really slick design, nice glass. So I bought that with a 50 millimeter 1.4. That was my first personally owned 35 millimeter camera. And about this time, I was graduating from high school, and college was coming. I I didn't know if I was going to go to college. I was working at the hamburger stand, and what happened next? I was at the hamburger stand on a weekend, and the phone rings. My dad was calling me. He lived in he was in LA and I was in Sacramento. He was down here, been married again, and he became, he got quite high of an IBM. And I think his job was going to pay for our college if we wanted to go. My
Wow.
sister knew that she wanted to be a nurse, but she was already in nursing school. And so he calls me, he says, well, he said, I got a question to ask you. What are you going to do with yourself? I said, I don't know. I'm managing in this place, but I mean, I'm going to try to find a job to be a photographer. He goes, look, here's something. He said, if you want to go to Oakwood College in Alabama, school started already, but he says, you sent your transcripts there from high school. So if you want to go, say the word and I'll send a ticket. You fly down here over the weekend, pack a bag and get your stuff. And they said they'll take you. You can make up whatever week you're going to miss.
Yeah.
So I called him back an hour later. I said, let's do it. I went. So I went to Oakwood College, and it didn't occur to me they didn't have a course in artwork or photography. I just assumed that other college I looked at had this, and they were like, so I got there and had my cameras with me, and nobody had seen. A lot of people that like photography knew what a Hasselblad was. They didn't know you own a Hasselblad. I'm like, yeah, and they're like, oh, and so my counselor was like, you you what do you want to be with yourself? What do you want to do? I said, I'm gonna be a photographer. No, you don't. That's like saying you want to be an actor,
Yeah.
to these guys. I mean, and they meant well. He said, do you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a preacher? You can elevate yourself, you can provide for your family. I said, I don't want to lie to people and lay hands on them like I'm in church. I said, he said, you'll never amount to anything. And I said, I'll be the judge of that.
That's
So I
crazy.
ended up working on the yearbook and advance my skills by even, I was actually pretty good in the dark room. They had a dark room there. I ended up working in the media center running films for some of the classes, like I ran the projector and
What were you
I did a
majoring in?
there I just man, I was just, I was
Yeah.
freshman year of college could be like um uh senior high school 2.0,
Yeah, 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 for real.
yeah, you could mess around and
Yeah.
so I did my year, and my cousin, who came from New York City, she was 2 years older than me, and so She was graduating when last school. She said, "Why don't you come with me and stay with your uncle?" Because her father's brother was my mother's brother-in-law, and he lived in Queens. And so I came up there, and she had a Datsun 240Z, and that man, that was pretty wild for somebody that young to have a car. So we got in that car with all our stuff and drove to New York City from Alabama, listening to the Doobie Brothers on the radio and R&B music.
Yeah.
And I get to New York, and I'm there for about 2 weeks. And he lives in Queens, classic Queens neighborhood. Um, and my uncle worked as a chemist. I forgot what for the city of New York. Forgot what, but he was always going to work. And he goes, "Hey, I saw on the job board they have I'm looking for a photographer for a summer work program, and you'd work on the newspaper." He said, "So you should show him your pictures." So I got some color slides together and some black and white stuff like that. They hired my ass.
Nice.
Dude, I was in heaven. And it got even better because they gave me a canvas bag. He said, "We got your transportation together for you, a canvas bag of subway tokens."
Nice.
Because back then, a subway ride was 50 cents. And you had to do a token. You had to pay for it so you could buy tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an endless bag supply of those. And I had the Olympus OM1. I shot that most. I didn't use the Hasselblad because it just, makes no sense.
Yeah.
But man, they had me shooting um the all night summer parties in Spanish Harlem, and I was all over New York City shooting the kids working and playing and cleaning up stuff. And I was staying out all night. One of the guys' fathers who I met at college lived up in what's that borough way above Harlem?
The Bronx?
The Bronx. Yes, man. The Bronx is like Chernobyl. Okay. I got off the train. I went to this dude's house. He had a dark room, and I had some. The high speed film back then was 27 something recording film Kodak. It had grain the size of unground peppercorns. Okay, and it looked cool. And it was 1200. It was ASA back then. 1200 ASA, and he said, "Oh, yeah, you can come to my dark room." And so I got on the train and rode all the way up to this place. When I got to the elevated train, I climbed down the stairs. There was a burned out city bus that just was sitting there.
Mm.
And nobody gave a crap. It looked like the set of Fort Apache that Paul Newman was in,
Just another day out there.
Yeah. And so I remember Herbie Hancock has been playing fusion jazz. That was a hot thing. This guy if you wanted a stereo system in your dark room, you had record player and speakers. And you put the record on, play it again, so it wouldn't skip or anything. So I put on Herbie Hancock's Headhunters album, those long songs. And man, I played that thing like 6 times, processing film, making prints. And I had a small dark room in the furnace room in the basement of my uncle's place. So we had to process all our own pictures. I was the only photographer. I remember it. There wasn't another photographer at a newspaper.
Mm.
Yeah, but there were a bunch of student writers, that did stuff because I went out with some of them sometimes. But man, that job, I actually was there longer than the summer. And the job ran out, and then I was in Queens, and I was thinking, "What you gonna do?" It didn't occur to me I needed to get out of my uncle's place. They must have been sick of me by then.
Yeah.
Because I had cousins and a younger cousin. They had 3 kids, and me, I lived in their basement. And so my dad came for a business trip to New York, and he goes, the thing, he goes, "Hey, what you gonna do?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, here's the option. You can come to LA where I am now. I live in a huge house, a mansion." And he said, "There's a servant's quarter." He said, "We don't have any servants, so that could be your apartment. You can stay there as long as you want till you get on your feet." And he goes, "The thing is, though, if you live there, if you get a job while you're there, I want 10% of your wages," which is fair,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I didn't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I got there, and after a couple of weeks, I got a part-time job at Sears and Roebuck,
Yeah.
and I was in sporting goods, tools, and housewares. And one of the things I was very good at was assembling like tools and like lawnmowers. And the boss was like, "You're the only one that never has parts left over. You put something together." So I didn't think that was special.
Yeah, yeah.
It, so um, after about working there for 6 months, my father says, "Hey, IBM's hiring. I can't get you hired, but I can get you an interview." And I said, "I don't know anything about electronics," because I thought everything was electronics with them. And it was, but things were mechanical electric, and those typewriters with the ball. You remember those electrics?
Yep.
So my dad, when he got in the company, he had been a repairman doing that stuff, and then he transferred up out of that back into an office job, became an executive. So, but I was going for, it was called customer engineer. And so the interview was, they showed you a piece of something, a mechanical thing I'd never seen before with gears on it. There's two of them side by side. One is functioning properly and one is not. And he gave you time to look at it and play with it. And then when you say ready, he had to stop watching how long it took you to tell him what's wrong with it. So I looked at it for about 4 minutes, messed with it, and I said, ready. He goes, click. He goes, what's wrong with it? I said, that thing right there is off. He goes, click. He starts smiling, going, hmm. And he takes this, it looks like a dental probe. It had a hook on one end and a little prong. And it looked like a chopstick thing. It's about that long.
Yeah.
He goes, fix it. And so I fixed it. Big smile on his face. He goes, we're going to be calling you. I didn't believe him. Didn't believe him at all. Um, you know, and I forgot to tell you, when I left New York, about 2 weeks before I left New York, the Hasselblad needed to be repaired. So I went to this store called Camera Barn in New York City. There were lots of camera stores back then. And the guy looked at the camera, he goes, it's about $100. And I said, oh, okay. And then I saw this flat black thing that said Leica M5. And he said, oh, that's the new Leica M5. And that didn't have a lens on it. That didn't occur to me either. It didn't have a lens on it, but it was gorgeous. And I said, wow, let me see that. He handed it to me. And he said, oh, yeah, it's the first camera with a meter in it. He said, most people don't like it because it's bigger than their other cameras.
Yeah.
I know what he was talking about because I've never really looked at an M4.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen M3s, but, I'd never done them. And so I said, so I wound it and fired it. Sounded like butter. The handle was smooth. It felt warm. And so I looked through the rangefinder and, there's no lens on, so I didn't know. At that point, it didn't occur to me that if you buy this camera, you're going to have to get a lens, A. You're going to have to learn how to, it's completely different from single lens reflex. You're going to have to learn how to rangefinder focus. Yeah. So anyway, I said to the guy, how much for trading this Hasselblad in toward this? Because it was the price tag on those cameras in 1975 was $49.99
for a Leica M5.
But that's about the same money as now in inflation, dude.
Damn.
It's about $3.5, $4 grand, $5 grand around there for that. Yeah. Oh yeah. There. So he said, your camera and $100. I said, done.
Damn.
Because I didn't use a Blad that much. I didn't have a meter. I didn't have a prism on it.
Mm-hmm.
Cameras wasteful finders they suck. If you're trying to do street move, action stuff, they suck.
Yeah.
So I walked out there with a brand new M5 in the box, and when I got my next check, I got my next check. I went back to the same store, and he didn't have a lot of lenses. What he had was a brand new 90 millimeter f2 Summicron.
Interesting, 90.
And I bought it. I traded my OM1 in money for that lens for the next 3 years. When I came to California, that's the only lens I had on that camera. And you know what? I didn't know. I didn't think anything of it. For me, it was you do a group shot, you back up.
You back it way up.
I backed way up, and I was, I stopped it down when I needed to, and to this day, I just started cracking up because I'm going, you idiot. You learned, but I learned how to focus a rangefinder
Yeah.
because I like shooting wide open.
Okay.
And to this day, I still have some serious focusing skills on the rangefinder. I don't zone focus. I know how to do that. I know how, but my attitude is if you have great glass and it's meant to be shot wide open, shoot that crap wide open,
Mm.
for the look. And so um I got, so I'll go back to. So
Yeah.
they told me they were gonna call me. And so it took them 3 months to call me. And in the meantime, I didn't know I was being watched at Sears. And so 2 weeks before I left Sears, IBM called me and told me we're gonna hire you. 2 weeks before I left, the big man, the store manager, this big white dude, really, really nice guy.
Mhm.
And he's like, hey man, I'd like to offer you a chance to work in our big ticket sales. You get 9%. Now back then, Sears, they
Uh,
did re-roofing.
yeah. They did everything. It was the spot. I mean, like,
Dude, at the turn of the century, you could buy a house and they send it out and get somebody to build it.
yeah.
And so the department I was in, like I said, it was garden tools, lawnmowers, housewares, guns.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, guns, uh, custom, cheap pool tables to nice, tens of thousands of dollars slate tables.
It was like the Amazon of the day, you know? They had everything.
Yes, yeah. And so he's like, "What do you think of that?" I said, "Man," I said, "IBM hired me, and these are my last 2 weeks." He goes, "I'm not surprised." He goes, "If it doesn't work out, come back." And I thought to myself, "Doesn't work out there, I'm gonna do something. I'm not coming back to see it." And because I mean, it didn't occur to me about finances, and so if I'd have gone back to Sears, if things didn't work out, I'm going back to Sears. Do you know what kind of money I could have made?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's a cat. I mean, if you're there in the store and people need a house reboot, they're gonna find a nice guy,
Yep.
and that whatever you get your 9% and your salary, whatever. But I went to IBM. There was 5 of us in this classroom. We wore suits, and they trained the living whatnot out of us. There were 5 of us
What were they
for
what was the job you got hired for at IBM?
custom engineer
Okay.
to fix office equipment,
Hmm.
and they trained us on all their typewriters. There was 2 types of Selectric, correcting Selectric, and there were 2 types of standard machine, which was not the ball. There was the executive, which was a almost like a Gutenberg offset printing machine.
Damn.
It had separate spacing for all the letters, and usually the secretaries of CEOs had these, and the letters they type on this nice paper,
Hmm.
and the M had was 5 increments of space, and an N was 3, on a lower, and so when the M would run on another letter because it was wider, that was trouble
Okay.
because it had lots of little tiny parts and springs you could barely see with your eye. And that meant it had little things that would wear out and they didn't catch a rack, and it was like, fortunately, I only had one of those where I had to go repair it. I mean, you took your time, shoved it in your shirt, you rolled your sleeves up. And then if you took longer than they trained us so well, usually most things, we were in and done before 30 minutes.
Damn.
And on those, they said, you're going to probably need help from an expert. So call us. So, call your boss and tell them. So I had a guy come out and help me with that one. But
And were
those
you
machine, go ahead.
were you still shooting photos like while you're working at
Dude, I
IBM?
put the camera down.
Yeah.
I put the camera down for like 2 years.
Wow.
It stayed in my closet, and I kept thinking about it, And then one day, I was there for almost 3 years because like they hired me in 76. I was there for almost 76. Yeah, 1980. Yeah. And toward the end of 79, uh, I just realized, I said, I I liked working on stuff, and I was making a lot of money. My salary, I got my first apartment right after I graduated from the school there, and it was around the corner from my dad's house. And a one bedroom apartment in LA in a nice neighborhood, a decent neighborhood, was, under $200 a month.
Damn.
And that was parking. I was paying 125 a month in a one bedroom with a nice kitchen, and my salary was between $1,100, $1,300 a month. That's a lot of money. I was single,
Yeah.
no kids,
Yeah.
so uh man, it was like, and so I went to work one day and I went to lunch. That's one of the older guys. He'd been there for 10 years. And I said, man, how long you been here? And he got this look on his face. And I said, I never want to have a look on my face like that. I said, I'm quitting. And so I went back a week, I thought about it for a week, and went to my boss and said, hey man, I'm gonna quit. He said, why? I said, I'm not happy here. He said, wow. He said, how can you do that? I want to be a photographer, and I think I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understand, then I was thinking, I just love this so much. It didn't occur to me I could make money doing this. I just know how to do it. It didn't occur to me that you're gonna take pictures and people are gonna give you money. What kind of pictures are you gonna take? I didn't think about any. All I knew was I want to take some pictures. And so I did my 2 weeks, and then I left. The day I left, boss pulled me aside and he says two things. He said, first off, was it anything I did to make you want to leave? I lied to him and said no. Because I mean, he was my second boss there. He wasn't a bad guy, but he was corporate.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't care about us. He cared about his ass, and that's what corporate, life does to you. Worry about yourself. And, I know he'd throw us under a bus in a New York minute. And the boss before him wasn't like that at all. And of course he got promoted, he got promoted away from us. But anyway, and so then he just said, he said the most honest thing he ever said to himself, to me. He goes, I actually envy you. And I said, man, I got no kids, no wife. I got to go for this. And I said, if I was married, had a wife and kids, I said, I'd still be here.
Yep.
And miserable because I'd be going to work. I'd be doing good enough work to where you'd never fire me. IBM would never fire you. You just get a raise, and you just be trudging around.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you weren't going to be promotable material, you just gonna make some money and, get a pot belly and wear bad suits and go fix machines.
Yeah.
So quit. And I had before, 6 months before I quit, I bought a 4x5 camera. I pulled my Leica down and I bought a used 35 millimeter lens for it. So I had a 90 and a 35. And then the day I quit, I went and bought a wide angle lens from a 4x5, and I learned how to use a large format camera, focusing and all this stuff. And so I started learning to shoot houses. That's for fun. I'd line the camera up and everything was straight, like a good architectural. So I had a portfolio of buildings, and I did an egg shot with a drafting lamp for light. And I learned how to do the Scheimpflug corrections with lens front and rear.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an egg shot. I have the negative. I'm proud of that negative because when I processed it, and you should put in a frame, a Kodak frame, in a big rubber tank, and you process the film, dip and dunk and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I processed that picture, and it came out really good. The only problem was there was a thing called chemical drain. Like a stain on the negative. You didn't do the agitation right. I didn't do it right, so it's got these drag things. And I was ashamed of that, but now I love it because it looks cool. So but everything's racked out in focus. And it's a circle of eggs with an egg sitting in the middle.
So when you quit IBM, you was kind of just like, you're just like, I'm quitting this, but you didn't really have an idea of what you want to do with photography at that point. You're this.
And I was just fascinated with taking pictures of every and anything. So I could too. What I realized now was I was training myself to shoot commercial ad work with the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I already had a really good natural born understanding of lighting, you know. Uh, Basically, the drafting lamp was, it had a spring loaded arm and a light bulb, and I was shooting black and white film, so I didn't have to worry about color management, you know. But what guys are doing now is the LED lights have dominated the market because these wimps don't want to learn how to use a studio strobe,
Yeah.
So they get LED lights and they learn to take actually fairly decent but boring pictures with the LED lights because they don't understand how to shape the light and all that stuff,
Right. And
But
now everything you can just layer it and put it in multiple exposures and like composite it together in Photoshop. So it's a whole different thing. Like
and work on
that.
it so much by the time you're done,
Yeah.
you got some things that look pretty cool, but you know, you just kind of look at the people that do that. You go, you spent all that time working on something. You should have made proper exposures,
Yeah.
and you'd be way better off starting off with a better file that's properly exposed and trying to go back and fix stuff you didn't. You should have done it in camera, but they don't know.
Yeah.
So
Because were there any photographers, like you said you're kind of self-taught and just kind of figuring out yourself,
yeah,
but were there any photographers whose work you were kind of looking at or inspired you at all, kind of starting out at the
yeah,
beginning?
man. My stepmom, she was really cool. My mother was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Stepmom was very cool too in different ways. Her name was Beth, and Beth, she would send me articles of photographers like at the time, who was president? It was David Hume Kennerly,
Oh yeah, I've interviewed him.
who, yeah, he was a White House photographer, and
Mm-hmm.
he'd been a combat photographer, you know. But his pictures were, I was like, who's it? And then I found out about Richard Avedon,
Yep.
and then later on, I start looking at Ansel Adams because those pictures, man. You're looking at these landscapes. And so I got into real hardcore negative processing
Mm-hmm.
because that's the secret to a good picture. You get a good negative, you can do, and you learn how you get that negative, you put it in a good enlarger.
Yep.
Yeah, man, that's golden. And so I was very good at processing film, and I learned to be very good with the photographic papers of the day. Um, so where was I going with this? I forgot where
I
I
was
was
just
going.
talking to you about like being that you're kind of self-taught, this photographers
Oh yeah, yeah,
inspired you
yeah.
and kind of
So
helped. Yeah.
yeah, Ansel Adams, and Ansel Adams was so you're looking at his work and you're thinking, so this is all in camera, and so so he had these books out, the negative, the photograph, and what was the other one? These really good books. They talked about his work process
The print,
and the
right?
print and the
Yeah.
print, and I have those books, and so I read them from cover to cover, man. I'm walking around these things. And so what I finally realized with Ansel was his magic was in the darkroom.
Mm-hmm.
It was less of the zone system exposure because later on I ended up meeting one of his assistants, a guy named Rod Dresser.
Yep.
And Dresser showed me he had some of Ansel. He had showed me, I think he had some of his negatives. He showed me some of the famous negatives. I was like, I knew a little bit about dark. I said, boy, to print that, you need really special stuff. And so in the print he had diagrams. He talked about his enlargers he had custom made. He had an unconventional enlarger that was not vertical, it was horizontal. Vacuum easel to suck the paper flat,
Damn.
50 bulbs in the enlarger head, and turned them on off separately for dodging and burning.
Damn.
Think about that. Okay. And these are negatives that he did the zone system on. And then he would use, you could go to the dark room in any camera store, say you shot a sunset, and in those days, if you got the sun to look good in the sky, the foreground was too dark.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't dodge that. But what you could do is you bought something called powder stuff called Farmer's Reducer, which was like chemical dodging. And then there was intensifier, which was like chemical contrast. So you could burn your skies in, and then you could hold your foreground after you had got the negative, you know. So I'd done that before. And then there was chemical toning. I'll say this, a lot of my digital black and white, because of my, it looks really good because of my darkroom experience on knowing how film looks and how a black and white print looks on paper.
Yeah.
But I will say this, there's nothing like film.
Yeah, my friend sent me this fiber print today in the mail, and I was like, I hadn't seen one in a while, and I was just like,
Yeah, man.
it just hits different. Like it's just like you can just feel the texture. It's so good.
You can see the texture.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the tonal scale. I mean, I'm a very good. I was a master printer and analog. I became that guy, and I even got better when I stopped using condenser enlargers and started using diffusion enlargers because they show highlight detail and shadow detail like insane. And I ended up with the best enlarger in the world, which is a Durst Labrador L1200
Damn.
with pin-fed glass carrier with anti-Newton glass and a matte set of enlarging lenses. And I still have all that stuff in a darkroom. I got one of those weird easels from a guy named Salt Hill. It was the best easel in the world, 16 by 20, and it had 5 blades. So I could put a 4x6 print or a 60 by 20 print and put borders anywhere I wanted without any problem.
Damn.
Yeah. And I still have that easel, So I my photo heroes, the thing with the zone system was that I had 4x5 cameras. I got better 4x5 cameras. I'd go out and I'd shoot the most boring, difficult stuff. I'd find a white wall at 12 noon and set the camera up, and I would shoot 4x5 sheets, and I would get them ready, and I'd go, zone system process them, and so the zone system, and it applies to digital photography. They say all camera meters, even the ones in digital cameras today, will render whatever you pointed at middle gray, which is zone 5.
Mm-hmm.
So if you point that camera at a white wall, it's going to make it gray. You want it to be white, you open up a stop. And you're placing your zone where you want. And a black wall, you stop down a stop, or what it takes to make that wall render black. And same thing with film. So what Ansel would do is he would go shoot maybe 5 to 10 sheets of film at the same exposure. He didn't bracket. And then he would adjust his exposure by adjusting the time in his chemical process. And then he would get that negative. And there's a shot called Aspens, these white trees. Man, I've never seen black and white actually look like the feeling. You could feel these trees and the separation and everything, and I also learned metering. So I had the 1 degree spot meter. I ended up with a flash meter that read also ambient light. And then when I got even more into it, I ended up buying a color temperature meter because I started shooting. By the time I started really working, I was doing commercial ad work, and you had to deliver that in transparency film, and it better be correct.
And carrying around probably a lot of gels when you're shooting, like
gels. Like I had 4x4 inch filters from Switzerland, the square ones, and went into a thing, and they weren't cheap, but my pictures, they look like someone would think a Photoshop file when I was done with them.
Yeah.
And I look at those transparencies today, and I'm like, wow, I still have them, and they look great. It's just I ended up working for architects. So let me step back. So when I quit working by IBM, before I could start making money as a photographer, I was freelancing, fixing IBM equipment that wasn't on service, because I knew I could legally go buy the parts. Mm-hmm. They had a part shop. You go buy the parts, and weren't that expensive. And those machines were so well built, they hardly ever broke down.
Yep.
And so I was charging them $50 an hour. What IBM was charging if you were in a service contract, and people didn't want to be in a service contract. And so I was working in the architect's office, working on a machine, and I had my portfolio to my black and white images. And in that book was the picture of several buildings and houses. And so his assistant saw that and he says, let me show my boss this. Comes back and goes, you shot these? I go, yeah. He goes, man, these are really good. He goes, I want you to work for me. And I told you my salary was like between 11, $13 a month when I was at IBM.
Yep.
Man, I started shooting for him. And I was making that in a week.
Damn.
I was in heaven. I was like, this is great. Didn't occur to me in my silly ass that he didn't make every house in the world. You're going to run out of work eventually,
Yeah.
but it was 7, 8 months worth of work,
Damn.
and I bought more cameras and, at the time I was driving a 1967 Volkswagen Beetle and I had put Subaru seats because they were better seats and they reclined. And I took the back seat out and had it all nice in there. And I put my 4x5 camera in the back. And so that was my, my shooting car. And I drove that thing around till it got stolen because that's what they did to Beetles. Parked that thing someplace and it came out in the morning. It was gone.
Yeah.
And then ran out of work, lived on the money for like 2 or 3 months. And then there was an ad in the paper for someone looking for IBM repair experience. There's not a lot of those guys around. And so I answered the ad and they hired me. And that's how I ended up working at Transamerica Occidental Life. That was 1980. And so let me explain. My repair experience and skill was at the level, if I'd have been in the Army, it was a level of Green Beret Special Forces. They train you. You're not dead till you're not breathing. If you shot up, you still, you fix yourself and keep killing. You don't have any problems. There are no problems.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they trained us very well. And in the shop, they only had, so these guys in the shop, one guy had been to a 2-week course at IBM would take money for to train people on the basics of a selectric typewriter, which was a joke because you don't learn nothing on that machine in 2 weeks. But he, this guy that they brought to the interview to see if I knew what I was doing. So he put a machine in front that I didn't know at the time that he couldn't fix.
Mm-hmm.
And I fixed it in 2 seconds. I was like, doop, doop. And the boss was like, wow, that's cool. And I realized I also made an enemy on the spot.
Oh shit.
I didn't know that,
It's like you made
I wasn't showing off anything, but this guy was like, he didn't believe, he just didn't. And so the old guy that hired me had been there 35 years, was really cool. And, we worked on mostly IBM typewriters, and there were the manual machines, which were very easy. There's no motor in them. You usually just would take a tool and the letter was crooked. You just bend it back in place and put oil on it and you'd send it back.
Yeah.
And there were guys that worked on, I didn't have to work on anything else but IBM and the typewriters. And then there were guys that worked on calculators. So anyway, the new boss came in. He'd been there 25 years waiting for a job. And he sits us down and flexes his muscle. And he had a talk with each of us. He goes, you're not planning on staying here. I said, oh, hell no. I said, I'm gonna make some money or get myself a living warehouse to work out of. This is before I knew they were called loft spaces,
So you're still you're even with this you're it's just a means to ends and you're just thinking photography. You're like
oh man, dude, yeah, because the job, if we didn't have a lot to do, we could take long lunches.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually fixing most of the machines that were difficult. And what was really funny was the new boss was friends with the other guy. I told you didn't like me because he didn't believe I was fixing the machines. And so when the review came time for your raise review, I'm thinking I'm gonna get a raise. He's trying to fire me.
Mm.
And it's like, I'm thinking, you're gonna get some more money. No, he's like, I don't think you like working here. And I don't believe you're fixing the machines. And I said, well, every machine I worked on, does it come back, Al? He got quiet and couldn't say anything. And I looked at him and I said, John was a guy, and I said, I'm even fixing machines that he won't touch. And he got quiet, and he just kind of said, well, and he smiled, and he sent that up to our boss above us. And so that guy called me up. I went to see him, and he's like, I can't believe that the old guy that left said you could walk on water, and now this guy says you can't even chew gum and tell me what you got in your mouth. He says, and he said, I know there's something ain't right, but he says I can't fire you, but I can't give you a raise. So he said, figure out how to stay there. That was another guy that worked there, and he worked on calculators. And we went to lunch, and he started trying to convince me. He said, "Do less," which was that baffled me, and I did. I did less, and he said, "You also need to enter the employee art contest." And I said, "They're not ready for my work. I could go out at night, shoot my 4x5 color, and I was making prints, and I entered. Like after about a year, I entered, and I won.
Damn.
And they started giving me freelance photography work in addition to working at Transmitter. And the boss couldn't stop it because people way above his pay grade. Dude, they were coming to get me. And I'd bought two new Leicas. I bought two M4Ps. They came out. I had three lenses. I had a 50, a 28, and a 90. I had a Sunpack flash for it, and then I eventually bought a FM, Nikon FM.
I love it. I love it, Frank. You always been a gearhead, man.
Hey, man, so the thing I realized was you can only do so much with a rangefinder and so when I hired them, my main two cameras were the Leicas rangefinder. So I was doing event work, flash and green event work.
Yep.
And I had to hold a flashlight to focus, and the pictures all came out. And I was shooting color slide film for them for their ad for magazine.
Yep.
I was shooting famous politicians because insurance people they know everybody.
Yep.
They sent me they were hosting lunches all the time for like John Wooden, the legendary UCLA coach.
Yeah.
They pulled me out of the shop, and the executive would come get me, put me in a company car, drive me to these high-end luncheon with all these guys in suits and $200 and $300 shoes, and I'm shooting. They're holding, getting a plaque or something. Mm-hmm. And then they were giving me commercial ad work to shoot.
Damn.
Because I taught myself Studio Stroll and I was shooting that. And I was processing. Yeah.
And that was like back in the day, like I was never around for this, but I always just heard these stories like these companies back in the day, like annual reports. That was like a big business for like a lot of companies back then. Did you ever shoot any of that?
Yes. Yeah. So wait, this is what happened. So next thing, one day the art director who, before I won that art contest, hadn't given me the time of day. He was going to give me all this work. He goes, I want you to meet somebody. Can you bring your portfolio? And I had somehow looked at magazines and realized how to do drink shots I found out they were selling discount melted ice cubes and they were plastic. The expensive ones were glass.
Yep.
I was making about $100, $50 to $100 for a cube. We needed at least 3 cubes.
Yeah.
And then so I put together these cheap plastic ones and got some bubble water and did a Perrier drink shot with 4x5, and set it up, put down tile and stuff. And I was doing I had a really nice portfolio. So I got that stuff in black and white. He took me on the 30th floor. This is where all the power is. This is where the chairman of the board, the vice president. You didn't go up there unless you had a reason. You didn't want to. If you were smart, you kept your head down, your mouth shut when you went on that floor.
Yeah.
It was like, don't attract Jesus's attention, or you might get struck down. Mm-hmm. So, I was in the room with the art director's boss, a guy named Cy Baylor. He's the only guy up there with a beard. You could tell he used to be a hippie, but he was a high executive. He was very cool. Every other word out of his mouth was motherfucker. He's a New York Jewish cat. He saw me and said, hey, motherfucker, how you doing? I said, I'm fine, man. He kind of broke the ice. And he says, let me see what you got. He says, I hear and I can see you actually know what you're doing. He said, man, you got everything from people, places, things. And he said, the guy, the art director says, he said, did you know we have 10 other freelancers we use and you're out shooting all of them? And our photographic needs are getting higher and higher. He says, this company's getting bigger. he said, we insured the '84 Olympics. That's coming. And he says, I got something I want to tell you. He says, we're thinking about creating a position for a photographer for the company and call you a corporate photographer. You'll be traveling in and out of the country for us. And my head stopped spinning and I was like I was very cool. I was like, ooh, I was like, oh man, you'll be shooting annual reports,
Yeah.
and if you take the job, you'll be on probation for 90 days. And after 90 days, we'll buy you whatever you want to use. You can use it for yourself on your side business if you have it.
Wow.
And I was like, let me think about it. So I left there. I was walking like somebody had told me, you just won the lottery.
Yeah, because you're the other,
You
you're
know,
about to be like fired the other jobs, and then it's just like a complete 180 pretty much to your
yeah, but
dream job.
this was 2 years after that. And so,
Yeah.
that all worked out because what I did was I did less
Yeah.
and conform. I conformed outwardly to the rest of the guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he left me alone. But
It's amazing.
so man, so they said, don't tell anybody, just keep it to yourself. It was 1983, and then the beginning of 84, they said, okay, you're gonna start. And so I had to dress a little bit better, and I had clothes. And I left, said goodbye to the guys. I wasn't mad at Al, he was just doing his job, it was like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so I was working out of the communications department with the art directors, and I had my own 4x5, my own flash system, so I was using all that stuff. After 90 days, they said open the counter, I need cameras, all the camera stores. Man, it was like, so I was smart. I didn't just buy all the dream stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't buy my main cameras were Nikon. I didn't buy Leicas because the problem is when you travel out of the country, there's not a lot of Leica dealerships.
Mm-hmm.
And back then the reflex was a SL, lovely camera, fantastic camera. And but the pros were Nikoned out, and the top camera was the F3. The F3 just come out, and they made the F3, and then they came up with titanium F3s. So I had three. I bought five. I ordered four bodies, motor drives for them. I had six different lenses, no lens longer than 180 because I said I'm not going to buy an exotic long lens when I don't need it. I can rent that, and they'd pay for it.
Yeah.
I ended up owning my own Hasselblad. I bought a Hasselblad on my own and a lens, and I bought a prism for it. I kept the M4Ps, and when I traveled, I took the Nikons with me, and I had the M4Ps in a small Pelican case as my backup cameras because they always worked, no matter.
Yeah.
And man, the first place I went out of the country was Kyoto and Tokyo, and then the top 25% of the salesmen, the cream of that crop, got a special 2-week trip to Thailand, and I went there.
Damn. What were they
Yeah,
having
man.
They was kind of have you kind of
I
document.
shot everything. Basically, my job was to piss off the salesmen that weren't working because they
Yeah.
put these pictures in the magazine at a good time. And I mean, they spent money on these trips.
Oh yeah.
And they took you bring your wife with you, and they spent and they bought me a tuxedo. They said go buy a tuxedo and we'll pay for it because a lot of black tie stuff. So I traveled. So when I went on a trip, I took 400 rolls of color slide film.
Jesus.
And then as my backup film, it was E6. My backup film was 80 rolls of Kodachrome because Kodachrome wasn't as sensitive to temperature as 86 film was. And if Kodachrome film was a black and white film until you processed it and the chemical process for Kodachrome was so chemically nasty, you had to have a federal permit. The labs had a federal permit. It was K14,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a weird cast to it. You had to, but you could still, use it in a pinch, you could use it. So I always took 2 bricks of that. And they were in lead bags, because I didn't carry it on the plane. I had to check that stuff. And the cameras were on the plane with me. Never checked that stuff on. You know, it was always on the plane with me. And I didn't take all the Nikons. I took 3 bodies, 2 to shoot in the backup, you know. And I was in shape. I was in shape like OJ. I went to an airport with all these bags. I was running through airports. No, I didn't. It didn't occur to me you need to get a cart, fool. I was running. You know, I was like, yeah, I don't need to get a cart. And so, yeah, that was the first trip, and they thought I was the best thing since, you know, spring water. I was I was able to shoot. I was able to meet and shoot people. A lot of the guys that met me, uh, the salesmen, these white guys, they'd never been anywhere close to a black guy unless they've been in college with one, or they watched him play football, you know, or watched it in a movie. And I remember the first meeting I went to, um, all the senior vice presidents knew me and they liked me. They introduced me to these guys, and within meeting most of them, you know, we got along real well. And they soon really liked me a lot. Couldn't wait to see me again. Um, it got to be a point where whenever we were going out of the country on one of the meetings, one of the guys even tried to get me to date his daughter. He's like, Frank, you're never gonna make any money as a photographer. He said, I'll get you your financial clearances. I think you had to get an SEC clearance, take a class for finances. And because they were doing family planning and all that kind of stuff, you know, and wills and all money management stuff. And so I said, man, she was fine too. It was like, I mean, she was a carbon copy of her mom. You know, this guy had all these cute little redhead daughters, and he said, all the guys she dates are assholes. He said, I like you, you're a nice young man. I said, man, I said, I'm honored, but I said, I like taking pictures a lot,
Yeah.
you know, but stayed doing that. But the trips were, whew, man, one time in '86, when the terrorists were killing Americans in Paris, there was supposed to be a trip to Paris. And a lot of the top salesmen, these guys, you know, they controlled the company. They were making money. They're like, we're not going to go to Paris because we don't want to get killed. So the travel department, convention department came up with a great idea. They said, okay, we won't go to Paris. They chartered an entire Royal Caribbean cruise line in Miami.
Oh,
And
shit.
for us, all of us on this boat, and they flew us to Miami. We were in the Caribbean for 2 weeks.
Damn.
I was already in great shape. I got even better shape running up and down ship's deck shooting. And we were going on and off the islands. We had a day party in this place called Labadee, and it was a old pirate's hideout that they preserved and was on the tip of Haiti and was fenced off from the local population. And then Royal Caribbean leased that for the day, you know. And that was one of the days where the electronics, one of the Nikon shut down, but I had, you know, all the cameras and I was fine. Um, and the job, you know, I did annual reports.
Yeah,
I did
because
some,
because
yeah.
what did the job look like? Would you kind of the art directors to kind of give you like, hey Frank, we need you to shoot X, Y, and Z, and this is what we're looking for, or
They would draw it up, and I made it come to life, and way better than I ever thought.
yeah,
And man, I got some of that stuff in a box somewhere. But the coolest cover I did, the first cover I did for the annual report was I did a wide angle shot with the 4x5 camera, and I had all the executives and some of the female top executives at a table with their shoot coats off, arms rolled up, and it was like, you know, the camera was right down on the table, and the window light was coming on. I put strobes on them and balanced the lights. It didn't look like strobe, and it was like the table was a lake reflection of water. You could see them, and the company went nuts when they saw that.
Mhm.
And then, you know, the Transamerica Pyramid Building in San Francisco was the headquarters of Occidental Light. And so they got the idea that one of the covers on one of the annual reports was going to be a pyramid of people. See how I shot that? There's no Photoshop back then.
Yep.
They had an auditorium in the building because they owned United Artists. They would screen movies for the employees sometimes.
Hmm.
So I had them build risers on the stage. I had big, tall Gitzo tripod. I put a 4x5 camera on it, so it was level with the stage. And I had them put people on like we needed to a point. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels. We got the people up, men and women, and then I put two big soft boxes on this side and one on this side. So it was two times the light on this side, so it was kind of lit high, bright on this on the right, and a little bit darker on the left, and then a background light. And when I shot that, and they were done, it looked like it was photoshopped.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I processed the film. Most of the time, we had a lab that would do because I couldn't do all of it, but the special jobs I handled those. I processed those in the dark room because I lived in loft space down the street. I could literally almost walk or ride a bike to work. It was downtown, but yeah, I did that job until from '83 until almost 1990,
Nice.
and then I left and did something I never thought I'd do: start freelancing.
Oh, really?
And once I start freelancing, I don't want to be hired. Be hired by nobody. I want to freelance.
What
My
kind of
worst day freelancing was better than my best day working
Yeah.
because I was a great job. I don't have any regrets about it. But I worked so much when I was at Transamerica. I was on salary,
Hmm.
but they had to legally give me overtime. And my base salary when I started with them was $24,000 a year. 24, 25. And then they gave me overtime, triple time, and quadruple time.
Damn.
So at the end of the year, that $24,000 was close to 70 grand.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and you know what? It screws your taxes up because they tax you. Yeah, I didn't own a house, and I was like, oh, I'm fine, And so I did that, and I never took any vacation time. Every time I took vacation, oh, you need to work. And then they would get mad at you because the end of the fiscal year, you had to have taken your vacation time, or they got in trouble.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a cool job, man. I had it was a cool job. The first time I left the country for Japan was the first time I ever got away from America and got to really see uh, how people deal with you that aren't American.
Mm.
This country has taught me that we all know our place subconsciously. That's why neighborhoods are full of your own kind. And but yet we're United States of America, but we're kind of not.
Yeah.
And everybody's doing their own thing, and it's come up to that now, and it's like kind of scary. Um, America needs to learn how to take a joke and laugh again at ourselves.
Yeah.
Really, So what taught me more about this country was getting out of it to see how fortunate we are to be here and how happy people are living on a lot less and surviving. I mean, so they sent me to France, and I saw how I ended up meeting some people. I went to their house, and they had back then they had little tiny refrigerators. They bought food for the day. They didn't buy food for a week or 2 weeks. And they bought really good food. I mean, better, and they weren't fat. None of them were fat falling over,
Yeah.
They fresh baked bread. Grandma and grandpa are running around, still active, not
Hmm.
sitting in a wheelchair with oxygen tank,
Yep.
wheezing.
Yep.
Yeah, so uh, I freelanced, and man, I was making nice money.
Who are you freelancing for? What kind of stuff were you doing?
I did stuff for Kodak. Kodak had a thing with the wine company. I did something for them doing that. I did some stuff for Xerox shooting. Um, some of the work was boring, but some of the stuff was fun.
Yeah.
I ended up, they had me shoot Xerox copiers covered with like something new is coming, light it and shoot it and cover it and do some cool lighting on it. The money was good. You just do it. The wildest job I got a rep, and she said, "Hey, I just got this guy. He makes solar panels." and the solar panels they're all 3 feet long. One was 6 inches wide, one was 12 inches wide, and one was 24 inches wide. And he says he wants these like they're in a desert on the ground, with a mountain range and a sunset. And she said he got quoted 10 grand. What will you do it for? I said 7,500.
Yeah.
I did it all in the studio.
Damn.
I had a wide angle 4x5 lens, color transparency film that had these little flash units that would work. They were slaves. So when that main flash went off, they would fire. So I floated the panels on the right kind of paper. It looked like desert sand, and put the units under them so they flashed. So they were glowing with lights underneath them. And the mountain range was cut foam core, and I put a studio strobe head aimed toward the camera with gels on it. It looked just like, you know, still Hills of Sunday. He lost his mind. I was like, yeah, we got paid. You'd get a call. One of my friends was working for a company named Visa, and she said, "We need pictures of these Visa cards. We'll pay you, half day rate." It was like $1,800 plus expenses. You need
Yeah.
4x5. It took me an hour to do that.
Nice.
You get it done, you get paid. It was you got paid to shoot Polaroids for art directors because there were no smartphones back then. The
Nope.
smartphone, smartphones are so good now. If they had those back then, because art directors, most of them have an eye, and they could shoot, probably could shoot. They could have been doing most of. So they used to strip out comps with type and everything on them. Then you needed to shoot that for them,
Mm-hmm.
and so they could do that themselves. Um, and then I eventually got even. I went to 8x10 cameras.
Damn.
Had a Polaroid system for that. Polaroid for that was this electric thing you had to plug in.
Yeah.
And so the box of Polaroid came in a box, but it was separated. One was the negative, the other was the print paper. So you put a holder with the negative in it, you put it in your camera, and you did all yours like a normal view camera, you shot it. Then you put them together and ran it through the machine to process it. So back then, a box of 10, you got 10 shots in a black and white box of 10 in a color. Black and white was $100 for a box. Color was 150,
Damn.
and clients would pay for it.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of 4x5 Polaroid too.
It looks good.
That film, that back then was really good film. The Polaroid they have now, it's kind of wonky.
I
It's
miss
not this.
Type 55. I missed that film. That Polaroid film.
Man, Type 55. So what you had to learn with Type 55 was you either shot for the print or you shot for the negative.
I shot for the neg.
And I always shot for the negative. And I got one of the camera stores sold you a sodium sulfite kit,
Mm-hmm.
A leak-proof tub,
Yep.
like one of those paint things. And
Yep.
you fill that up and made the sodium sulfite, and you put that negative in to clear that gunk off of it.
Yeah, I used
But
the
what?
little
You know,
Rubbermaids. That's how I used to bring them around.
do you know what cleared that better?
What's that?
Fixer.
Oh
Just
yeah,
put
yeah,
it in Fixer.
yeah,
It was because it was better. I got some great negatives with Type 55.
yeah.
Um, I got a cool little gadget. There's an English guy called Chroma, and he makes 3D printed, really good ones, camera bodies, medium format. So you can order a camera, put a 4x5 lens on it, and you put the Instax 4x5 back on it.
Okay.
And that film is 800 ASA ISO, and it's true speed, and it's a good film. But you can put either a 4x5 camera, or he gives you a cone of your choice for the Mamiya press lenses.
Mm.
Those are really good lenses, and they have a helicoid in them and a shutter in them, like a view camera. And you put that on there, and you focus that thing, and you get tack sharp Instax shots on the big film.
Yeah,
I have that system.
that's amazing.
Those lenses are cheap and they're sharp.
No, that's amazing. And one thing I was interested in talking to you about, like looking at your work, you kind of shoot everything. You do portraits, you do studio, you do landscape. You're just kind of out in the world, just shooting life.
Yeah.
Have you always just kind of worked that way? Because some people say like, oh, you gotta find your niche, or like how do you kind of view your work and like everything that you shoot, I guess?
You find your niche. Nobody told me to do that. What my niche was?
What's that?
Anything the light makes look good.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're serious about the craft, the guys that know me start telling them, I say, do that work. That means you go find the most difficult thing you can and you shoot it. And when you're done with it, and I said, make prints.
Yep.
Stop looking at it. I mean, it's fine to look at it on an iPad or a phone. Make prints because you can't judge a picture till it's a print. Make a good print. Get some prints done. Um, Go shoot some film. You don't have to learn the process. Go shoot some film so you can see what film looks like that you shot and get a print made. Because that's the truth. That'll teach you a lot. It'll help you with your digital images. Um, like I said, man, at the end of the day, there's nothing like film. You don't have to break the bank. A lot of film cameras are cheap now.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing you can do is to go find a funky Holga, put some 120 film in it, and you point that thing and you shoot it.
Yeah.
And you will find out what is and what ain't. I am still learning. I'm still learning. One of my friends introduced me to somebody. He said, "This is Frank. He's forgotten more about photography than what anybody's ever going to learn." And I said, "Thanks, man." I said, "That is kind of true." I said, the bottom of the line is, I look at it like you should learn the craft. If you have a camera, learn to work that camera like they teach a combat soldier to field strip his gun.
Yep.
It jams. When you're getting shot at, you fix it. You know where all the switches are on the camera. When it was manual, it wasn't that much to it. Now the digital, you've got all these menus you got to navigate through. You need to learn how to adjust your camera for when you get into those situations where the highlights get too bright. And so a lot of the cameras, the high resolution ones, let me back up. I'll say this. What I realized was between film cameras and digital cameras, they're the opposite. Film doesn't like dark. Digital cameras love dark. They don't like bright. Too bright, it's called clipping.
Mm-hmm.
But in the dark, they see in the dark. Your iPhone will see in the dark almost too well. So a lot of I have a high resolution Sony, and I learned on that I leave it at minus a third all the time, compensation, or 2/3, and I like what I get. When Leica loaned me the monochrome, which the camera's fantastic for detail, because they take that filter out and makes it monochrome, it clips quick.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand highlights, you're going to get these beautiful black and white pictures with blown highlights, and you can't bring that back.
Yeah, the cloud. Yeah, it always happens in clouds a lot. They just kind of blow out.
And you know what? What's funny is you could fix that with either putting a polarizer on your camera
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to expose, and you get these glorious. Man, I got some shots in clouds with film that like Ansel Adams worthy and Edward Weston worthy. And I learned to use. They used to put a red filter on, but they made an orange filter. It was like not too much, but it would pop up the sky and darken the sky. You get these white puffy clouds with detail. Yeah, they loan me a monochrome, and the black and white of those cameras, you know what you're doing, is fantastic, but it's too clean. Film is. We talked about T-Max film. T-Max film is the cleanest, most tonal quality, detailed film I've ever seen in my life.
It's funny. You don't hear a lot of people talking about T-Max as much. Everyone's like Tri-X, and like I know some people HP5, but yeah, T-Max kind of gets slept on a little bit.
I'll tell you, here's my HP5 I was using HP5 as my main film in FP4, and then T-Max came out, and Um, Kodak gave me some pre-rolls of it, because I was a corporate photographer, so I went out with it, shot it, processed it, and I was using a different chemical. And I looked at the negatives with a very expensive German loop and was like cussing, going, "Wow, look at the detail
Yeah.
of this now." You know, hang on a second. And I was like, "Oh my God." And so that day and I changed film that day, and and um and I changed film that day, and I kept using that developer. And I was wondering where everybody else was complaining about T-Max. What they found out was they brought the film out, but didn't bring the developer out for it. So the
Yep.
rest of the labs were processing in D76 like Tri-X. It looked
Hmm.
like garbage,
Yep.
and it did not sell. All other photographers, they were looking at me going, "You shot T? How'd you do that?" And I said, "I'm using this liquid developer called Unitol, and I was using HC110. I was processing my own film. A lot of guys didn't do that." And later on, I one of the reps who got to know me, he started seeing me as kind of the enigma, kind of the oddball. He goes, he said, "I was showing the picture that you did," and he said, "We have one of the design team for T-Max. She's a Polish physicist. She wants to meet you." He said, "I'll take you to lunch." I said, "All right, I met her." And so she said, "I never knew our film could look this good." I said, "You're scaring me because you made this film."
Hmm.
It's like people that designed the best airplane in the world, and then you're flying it and making it do things they didn't know it could do. And you're going, "What?" I start thinking Kodak is, I start thinking something's wrong with them. They're doing it. And so they gave me more film, and then that started a loose relationship with Kodak. And so they would give me film to test, and the kind of stuff I was testing it on, I would go take a picture with the color film of the sun skimming across a yellow chair with dark shadows. Most of the time, they're looking for people shooting women in bikinis. I wasn't doing that, And so they were going, you know, and eventually they stopped giving me the film to do that. They gave me other film for other stuff. And later on, I did the same thing when I was doing it for Fuji, and they loved the fact I wasn't giving them pictures of women in bikinis.
Hmm.
I would go out and I'd shoot balloons on a street, people doing stuff. I wasn't shooting boring sunsets. I was doing real world stuff with the color films, and I was exposing it properly. And it's funny. Kodak would give you maybe 4 or 5 rolls of film to test, which is not enough film. That's not enough to test film.
No, no.
Fuji would give me a brown shopping bag. How much do you need? Here, you know. And I was testing Acros for them before it came out. T-Max film to me is for detail and stuff, and tonal scale is still a better film.
It,
It just it's if you so I had a client and I was teaching him lighting and we were shooting 4x5. And so he bought a 100 sheet box of HP5. I said, "Hey man, before you spend the money on that, please call me first." And he said, "But T-Max is more money." And he had to have money. He had
yeah.
money, And
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "Listen, we're gonna do a test." I went to his company and he has a warehouse, and I lit some boxes with strobes, and we shot sheet film, HP5 and 4x5 and T-Max, same thing. And we went back to the dark room because he built the dark room, put my equipment in it, and processed the film, and we made prints. And he's like, "Oh, I see." All the detail, all the shadow detail was, and without just making prints. HP5 is good film, very good film. The T-Max is difference between firing a bullet out of a gun or just throwing the bullets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, I mean, I'm not kidding. It's you know, and a lot of companies sell presets for film digitally. None of the film, none of those presets look like that film. I've seen
No.
them. It was like you need to go shoot some film and look at it with a loop, and then you can in Nik Silver FX Pro, you can make that grain and save it for yourself. You can make your own grain
Mm.
because I've been using that. That's my For my digital file, the last thing I do after I adjust them in whatever I'm going to use, either Capture One. I used Photolab as my main processor, and then I have Lightroom, and then I do the cleanup, and I can do cleanup stuff in Photoshop. You know, the little Photoshop that I know, and I think the digital is. I went kicking and screaming in the digital world. I was like, this ain't gonna ever be anything. Shut up. I was a young old man.
Yeah.
I don't know nothing. I remember the day, it's like, man, I said, you know what the voice said, Frank, you better shut up.
Yeah.
You
Train's already
better
left.
shut up.
Train's already left the station.
Hey, you know what? Learning digital kept me making money.
Yep.
And also I was able to, because I feel like I've always had a hell of an edge on a lot of the photographers who never processed film and never learned lighting like I did, because I learned lighting by printing. And you can't bend light. You can shape light, but you can't bend it. When you start cleaning stuff up in too much Photoshop, and you start bending light in Photoshop, it didn't look good.
And kind of hearing you talk about your work, it seems like you're always just kind of tinkering. It's like trying different developers, trying different films, trying different lighting. And is that this kind of been how you've learned and kind of figured stuff out? Is this kind of trial and error and just seeing what kind of works for you pretty
Oh,
much?
it was never error. It was try.
Yeah.
And then when you got it right, you kept on it.
Yeah.
So one of the guys he saw a stack of my proof sheets. This is what's funny. I got so good at processing film consistently out of my Blad, because that's what my walk around camera was for a long time.
Yeah.
I stopped making proof sheets. I just would go right from the negative. And I didn't bracket. I got to a point where I saw it. I knew what was going to happen. I was going to process it. I might take one shot or something, or two shot, and I moved on. Only have 12 shots on a roll. If I start bracketing, I'd be using a lot of film for pictures. So he said, man, these are consistent. I said, yeah. I said, I process my negatives so I can proof them as starting at contrast 2 in a very good enlarger. And I said, generally, I end up on good paper, either resin coated or fiber-based paper, making contrast 2.5, 3. I get fantastic prints. I remember one day a guy bought one of my photos, and I have a mount press, because you press fiber paper flat again.
Yep.
And so he bought a print for me. This was after digital printing had started. So I sent him the print. He goes, man, this is almost unreal. He said, are you sure this isn't inkjet? I said, it's not inkjet, man. I said, I would never sell you an inkjet print if you ask for a wet print.
Mm-hmm.
And now if someone wants a wet print from me, because I don't make a lot of them, I still know how, but I have a box of 90 wet prints, and it's like I get real serious money for those.
Yeah.
I've got boxes of 8x10, 5x7, a few 16x20, some 11. I got 11x14, like that feather picture. I showed the master printer at the Icon, the 16x20, the feather picture, a wet print. And the digital picture, he did an insane job. His Ken at Icon, that dude's a master. And yeah,
Right there.
yeah. The film, this looks amazing. Film of this,
Yeah.
is another world, man. Another world. Yeah.
What camera did you shoot this on?
Hasselblad, brother.
Nice.
Hasselblad, the truth. Hasselblad and Zeiss lens is the 100 millimeter 3.5, and this is it's in a clamp with a special balanced light box with studio strobe, and it's got a silver reflector aimed up at it. So lights at the top, and it's dark background. And I took 3 shots and didn't bracket. And this is T-Max 100. And this picture has got me through more doors. Years later, Sammy still had a store in Venice. He wanted me to do an exhibition in the store, so I was putting small 5x7 prints up. And one of the guys that I know had worked there for several years, he's from Argentina. He didn't have an accent. And he saw the feather picture. He goes, "You're Frank Jackson." well, yeah, man. He goes, I was a kid in Argentina. This picture made me want to become a photographer. And I was like, wow, man, thank you. I said, I'm
Wow.
humbled. Man, I was in Prague in 2015 walking with a buddy of mine, the same guy that I did the lighting thing with. And we were walking in Prague and it was springtime. So it was still cold. I had a hat on and a coat, collar pulled up. Somebody called my name from behind me. Are you Frank Jackson? I was like, yeah. He said, I saw you in a film that Chris Weeks did about Leica cameras back in 2009. And I said, man, you remembered that? He goes, yeah. And he said, wow, man, I really like your work. And it was a young Spanish kid who lived in Argentina. No, he lived in Prague in the they say Angel, the Angel area. And I think Jan Sadiq, the famous photographer, was from that area. There's a tribute for him on the wall someplace. But I mean, I've stepped out of places in Europe and bumped into people I knew.
Damn.
You know, I'm having, I have to say, a wonderful life. I things changed for me in 2003 when I came down. I woke up one day and I saw double. And I don't do drugs. I don't drink.
Yep.
I maybe take 3 drinks a year. You know, smoked a couple of joints. It didn't do anything for me. I think marijuana should have been legal a long time ago, but I don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I looked in the mirror and one of my eyes was going, this eye at rest was like right there, like a pirate that had
Wow.
been popped in the head.
Yeah.
And I would look in the mirror and I would strain and make it go straight again. And I would relax and go whoop, right back. I was like, oh man. And after about a week, I called a doctor buddy of mine and he got quiet, which scares you.
Mm-hmm.
He got quiet. He calls me. He says, go see my doctor buddy that came to the house at a reception. When you came, you met him. So I went to see Dr. Garwood. He's an eye doctor. So he shines a light in my eye and he's like, well, you might have had a stroke. And I'm like, ooh. He
Wow.
said, your optic nerve looks okay. You need to see a neurologist. And I was like, oh, man. I was freelance photographer. I didn't have a health care. I was muy mas macho.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't get sick,
Yep.
nah. And so it took 2 more months. And I got to see a neurologist that Bruce had gone to school with at UCLA. He was a rock star in neurology. And he was really cool. He accepted one of my black and white prints for payment. I couldn't afford this. I mean, a business to get to see the guy, period.
Yeah.
And his name is, I remember his name, Russell Shimizu. And so he told me, he said, look, don't take the medicine they're giving you. Because UCLA, well, my friends are paying for the medicine. And I hadn't been to the hospital yet. And so he goes, don't take the medicine and then come see me on this day. So I took to take it for a day. And by that time I wore an eye patch. My head started to fall over. If I talked too much, that stopped working.
Wow.
If I got ready to swallow, it didn't work. So I stopped eating. So I started getting skinny. And so I went to go see him. I was walking with a cane. A buddy of mine took me. And so he shot me full of this chemical the body makes that makes your nerves, makes your muscles fire. So you get tired. So if you're working out, that's the burn you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so my eye cleared, my eyes lined up. It was like, whoop.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa. And another thing happened before. One of my friends had just graduated from Chinese medicine school, and she was giving me free acupuncture to see if she could help. And so she'd take me out there, and she put needles in my knees, and my eye would line up when the needles were in. And then she'd pull them out and it'd go back out again. So, that wasn't going to work. This was the end of 2003. And by the time Christmas came around, I was shuffling around like an old man. My head was always like this, and I still hadn't been. I was diagnosed with something called myasthenia gravis. My immune system wouldn't turn off. So your immune system is attacking your body.
Yeah.
24 hours a day. Too many white blood cells. Then you find out that it's a rare disease. At the time, there was 14 per 100,000 got it. I read up online. Each one's different. It's either a minor little thing or it can cause you to die. You know, your muscles stop working, your legs start shaking. If you're in the shower, get out because you're going to collapse. Um, you're going to have breathing issues. Um, and I'm reading up online, go, oh, nothing that's going to happen to me. All of it happens. All of
Hmm.
it. I
Yeah.
almost choked to death in my dark room. I sneezed, my nose filled up with mucus,
Jeez.
and something got caught in my throat. And I stopped panicking, and a voice said, "Fool, stop it." I was holding my darkroom sink. I was even lost space behind. My neighbors didn't hear me. I mean, they're holding on. And it said, "You can breathe." And yeah, you know, you can breathe. If you don't panic when you're choking, you can get air down your throat. And so I got some air down. And then I kept Afrin around, you know, that nasal crap.
Yep.
Shot my nose full of that. And I was sitting in a chair and I called my buddy Bruce because he lived in loft space. Now, I was in the garment district and he was at the brewery area of Los Angeles.
Hmm.
And he said, "Do you want me to come get you?" And I said, I'd already been at the hospital because I collapsed before, and they took me and started billing me. And my bills were very high,
Yep.
you know, and I figured I wasn't going to be alive. So I wasn't worried about paying the bills.
Yep.
Um, and so I said, "No, nah, I'll go back in the morning." So they took me in. And so a neurologist said, "We've been scanning your chest." And he said, "We can see your thymus gland is over your heart. We're not supposed to be able to see that. That means it's come back to life.
Jeez.
And it's dumping more antibodies in your system, too many more white blood cells. They're swamping the medicine." He said, "You need a heart surgeon to take that out." And I'm like, "I don't have any money." He said, "Don't worry about that." It was like, easy for you to say. He said, "Don't worry about it." So I was in the hospital, you know, bald headed dude comes in 2 days later. "Hey, call me Wayne." "Wayne, how you doing?" Goes, "Ah," and he says, "You got something in you. You gonna let me take it out?" I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm the head of the School of Heart Surgery at UCLA." That's like, you know, you need lunch, and the top Michelin chefs have come in to cook your lunch for you
Yep.
just because they want to. And I was like, "Ooh." And I said, "What you gonna do?" He said, I'm gonna prep you like I'm gonna go into your heart." I said, "We're not gonna go into your heart because we don't need to." And he said, "I'm gonna get all of that out of you." And I said, "What are my chances?" He said, "I can't guarantee anything, but you'll probably be better off." It's called a thymectomy.
Hmm.
And so they did. Now, before the surgery, to wash myself in the shower, if I was brave enough to stand there, I had to do this with the washcloth.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so 2 weeks after no, I was in ICU 2 days after surgery, and I was able to shave myself. You know, I'd lost almost 50 pounds from not eating. Yes, I looked like I'd been in Auschwitz.
Yeah, because you're like a
I took
skinny.
pictures of I took pictures. I had
Yeah.
pictures of myself. Oh, this is funny. First time I went to the hospital, uh, you know, because I was main hardcore Hasselblad. Everything I was shot, everything with blood, some
Hmm.
4x5, but that was my walk around camera. I told my friend to bring me my Hasselblad in the hospital. Oh, they steal. I said, "I don't care. Bring them to me." You know, if I'm dead in the hospital with this camera, and I'm bury it with me. You know, it's like so. I was shooting. I'd order eggs for boiled eggs, and I was shooting them. And then they had the black and white C41 film, and I'd give that to one of my friends to take to a lab and process for me.
Yeah.
And then I had that T28i point and shoot camera, and they would leave me around the hospital. I was taking shots with that, and nobody ever stole my cameras. But I have a 4x6 book of some of the images when I was in the hospital.
Like,
I took pictures of myself 2 days before the surgery. I looked like one of the guys from The Walking Dead.
yeah.
Yeah, everything was hanging off me, you know. My face was drawn, you know. I looked like I'd been in one of those Vietnamese concentration camps. Um, but I was, you know, I've had this thing since the surgery was 2004, the day after my birthday. January 31st is my birthday, so that was February 1st. And last year, in like the end of June, after I had a show open, I had another episode that I went into I collapsed, had to go into the hospital, was in a coma for almost 3 days,
Yeah.
man. It was, but I wasn't emaciated like I was before.
Yeah.
I didn't think that would happen again. So, I don't live alone anymore. I'm staying with friends. Got to be kind of watched, but I'm doing better. Um, I'm getting some new medicine. Uh, you know what, man? It's when I first realized what I had, I did my crying in one day. I stopped being scared and I dealt with the fear. I've done more living with this disease. This disease has given me strength for my art. I was always fine art first,
Yep.
always, And I saw toward the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s that how things were going to go. I knew commercial work because, if you were decent, you made real money.
Hmm.
Guys were making $1,500 a day minimum shooting pictures, you know. And first thing happened was iPhone came out, digital cameras came out, and they stopped being less expensive, you know. And all the students getting out of the art schools and photo schools, they had student loans to pay. So they start undercutting the rates.
Yep.
So, you thinking a client's going to call you, don't get no less than $1,500, you know. Um, you used to, so a magazine would call you, and if you were even halfway of note and had a reputation, you got a magazine cover. That's $1,500.
Yeah.
Those jobs became $300, $500, $300.
Yeah, photography used to be like obviously it's art, but at a time it was a trade like any other type
It
of
was a
job.
respected because it was a trade.
Yeah, because it was a trade, and but then with advent, I think digital and stuff, now it's the attitude of like the bar to entry is a lot lower. There's a lot of like work that's like, oh, this is good enough. It's
There
not
is no
the
bar.
yeah, exactly. So it's
There's no
like
bar. No, the bar is
yeah,
so skateboard. No, the photography now is a lot of times, unfortunately, people get into it like they do skateboarding.
hmm
They get on a skateboard and they break their ankles and scrape themselves up till they learn how to ride,
hmm
and along the way, you get some guys that turn to be really good and you get some hacks. Um, and a lot of times photography is like people that decide, well, I'm gonna learn how to swim. No, I'm gonna go. Can you swim? No, I'm just gonna jump in. Oh, you might drown. Oh, I'll be all right. So um, people look at like the floating coffee cup, and that's all analog. There's no Photoshop in that at all. It's light painted for exposure. 15 minutes. So I started explaining it to them, and the ones that are into it, their eyes don't roll up in the back of their head like you born me, you know. Because every time I see that picture, I can't believe I did that, but I did,
hmm
and could probably do it again if I had to. You know, photography is the one thing that was mine. It gave me confidence. Me and my father, like I told you, he was distant. When he got older, he became a dad. Men can all be a father. You can make a kid, but dad is the guy that comes home and everybody runs and jump on his arms. That's daddy.
yeah,
You know, daddy's the guy you fall asleep on. You know, and me and my father, we talked about stuff. And he ended up being a really wonderful man. I miss him. My father got cancer,
yeah.
two bouts of cancer.
You have an
Huh?
amazing portrait of him. I think he's like in the hospital himself.
That's
Uh,
my grandfather,
oh, that's your grandfather.
who wasn't really. He was tired from a trip. My father was firstborn. He was Frank Jr.
Hmm.
I'm third. My grandfather was senior. So my grandfather, that trip, that's a funny story.
Yeah.
He you couldn't tell my grandfather anything, man. He was a trip, and I I told him. So my sister was going to drive up from here with her two kids to surprise him. At the time, I think my niece was 10 and her brother was forgot how much younger he is, but he was maybe six, maybe I think six or yeah, maybe six. And so she called me up and said, "Look, I'm a surprise. I didn't tell him I was going to bring you. Will you go with us?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go." So we got in the car and he drove up. And so my grandfather didn't like flying, and he was in Philadelphia. So he said, "I'm taking the train." He couldn't tell him nothing. He got married again. He got lucky and married a wonderful woman after my grandmother died. She wasn't too much older than my dad, and my dad thought very highly of Jessica. She was from Jamaica, beautiful woman. You know, she put up my grandfather. She deserves. She becomes a saint for that. And in his day, you didn't do anything a woman told you. You told women what to do. He's like so. We get to the house, and she's on the phone arguing with somebody. I said, "What's going on?" She called me Jackie. But Jackie, when you tell him to stay in the hospital because he wants to come out and the doctors, and I can't make it, he won't listen to me. And I said, "Give me the phone." And I said, "He won't listen to you?" I said, "Granddaddy, stay in the hospital." "Okay." And I was like, wow. And she said, "Thanks." And so we went to go visit him, and my niece climbed on the bed, and he started counting to her in perfect German. I said, "I know you spoke German." He goes, "That's actually Yiddish." He said, "I'm pretty good at it." He said, back in the early 30s or before that, he was a young man working in Philadelphia, and he fell in love with this Jewish girl, from what I'm told, and the parents liked him. They were going to let them marry. They were going to send them both to Palestine to get away from the racism in this country,
Mm-hmm.
because it was apparently a lot more accepted there, but that didn't happen. So, but yeah, he was a kick. He was short. My grandmother was tall, so I got my height from my father and my grandmother. But so I had my Hasselblad with me. I took some great shots of him.
Yeah.
I got some amazing shots of my dad, and then got shots of him like 6 months before he died. He still looked good when he was sick. But I
And
remember. Go ahead.
no, no, they're amazing portraits, and I guess for you, this kind of talking about everything you kind of dealt with your health situation, like what's kind of kept you going? Because I mean, I can't imagine dealing with what you've dealt with, and a lot of people could, lose their mind, lose their sanity from dealing with what you're dealing with. But like, what's kind of kept you like keep going, man? Like, and it seemed like just talking to you the last few days, you're still very inspired with photography and still excited about life. How do you kind of deal with all that?
I'm not dead yet.
Yep.
And you know what? You get to do dead when you're dead. There was a philosopher that said something that I never forgot when I read this. I don't know. He said, "The dead know one thing. The dead know they are not living." I
Hmm.
said, "Yeah, that's true." So, as the man said in Shawshank Redemption, either something about start living or get to dying.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you know, we should remember to be grateful for a lot of things. I'm alive because of friends and family.
Hmm.
Man, my friends and family, man. Ooh, you want to know who your friends are? Get sick
Yeah.
and see who still comes around.
Yep.
Especially if, because when people get ill, one of your friends gets ill, a lot of people think, I don't want to catch what they got. But who, it's like you can't hug somebody and get cancer from them.
Hmm.
You can't hug an HIV patient and get HIV from them. It's not going to happen. You know, I'm I this disease has actually helped me a lot more than anything else. It calmed me down. It I learned not to cut corners with my photographic journey. You can't you sometimes you gotta walk down the racetrack. You know, speaking of that, they say nice guys finish last. I remember I was at the beach one day and one of the guys I knew, good looking dude, and he was chatting up the girls. He was chatting up this German chick, and they were laughing about something. And I heard him say something to her, and I was in a conversation, and I said, man, I would never do that. He said, that's because you're a nice guy, Frank, and nice guys finish last. I thought about it for a minute and looked at both of them, and I said, yeah, but they finish,
Yep.
and I walked away. And yeah, sometimes it's not when you finish, it's just finishing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're smart, you're never done.
Yeah.
The journey, the trip you should be on your journey. You should keep going on your journey. See, I simplify it. There's a thing where your process, your work process, your workflow, it's you learn, you can't teach composition. You're born with an eye. Everyone has their own eye, whether or not they like it or know it. Some people can train it. But if you see and you're a visualist and you can learn to see through a camera, what thing with me was it scared me more than anything else. I'd see something in my mind and I could shoot it and make it come out and scare me until I got to learn to be consistent. So I could do it without thinking. Because when you're in your flow, you don't have time to think. You act.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as I wrestled in high school. Found out I was a very good wrestler. And our coach, you know, he picked the best of the people going out for it. And we had a lot of good guys on that team. And our team was so good. If you wanted a position, either JV or varsity, 2 spots in the weight classes. Before meet, we wrestled off. And there were 2 spots for the weight class. I always wrestled, either JV or varsity, didn't matter. He taught us he said, everybody's in shape, but you don't win with your muscle, you win between your ears. And you get in that guy's head and defeat him there first. You own him. And when they know it, you can see it in their eyes and feel it. And I learned that stuff. But, there's a bunch of things that I realize now. I didn't know anything about finances.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the younger guys that come to me, one of the things I say to them is, don't quit your day job unless you're making so much photographic work that you're forced to, because you're not going to have any friends if you're sleeping on their couch.
Yep.
Don't buy cameras on credit cards.
No, don't do that.
Don't buy all the equipment. You don't need it. I said, have a camera and a lens and then rent the stuff.
Yep.
Please don't make any kids until you're sure you want to be a daddy. Don't do that. Just wait for that.
Yeah.
If you do, those kids come first.
Yeah.
I have no kids. I got no wife, and
And I think it's like, I've been doing this for a while, and it's like getting hired doesn't make you a photographer.
no.
Being a photographer is taking pictures, and honestly, more than anything, at least for me, the pictures I've taken for myself mean more than any job I've ever gotten. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like you said, don't kill yourself unless you're making money off it, because it's just, I mean, at least for me, that's where I'm at. Like photography, it's really the personal satisfaction. That's the most important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it, man. I still love it.
Hmm.
Everything I don't think everything I do is wonderful, and some of my images I can't believe I did them. They look different to me. They inspire me.
Hmm.
The other thing about me is the mentors I had when I was coming up most of them were scared of me after they saw my talent, and they froze me out.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of a mentor. They ask me stuff, I tell them I don't hide shit. I'm like, look, you need to do this, this, and this. I said, hey, you got an eye. And I said, I'm never going to be in your way if you want to fly higher than me. I'm going to help you fly higher.
Hmm.
And as a Black man in America, that's unity. We need to learn to be that way because, our history was, and I'm not mad at white people. I don't hold them, I don't blame them for the past. I blame them for the present and future.
Hmm.
And it's like we were separated, torn apart, stepped on, and then they found ways to keep stepping on us in weird, sinister little ways. You find out the stories of we never were allowed to get decent housing, even if we could afford it.
Yep.
And anytime we were economically sound, um, the white folks, some of them got mad and destroyed it, like Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know, and not only in that country, they did a January 6th in Tulsa, except it was a lot bloodier than January 6th was. They got, they came in, wiped everybody out, killed a lot of people, and they swept it under the carpet for years. And people still don't know the entire story. You know, on my trips to Germany, the Germans have made some pretty good atonement toward their Nazi past. They really have. It's you don't run around waving Nazi flags in Germany. you, you get in trouble for that.
Oh yeah.
I think freedom of speech is a great thing. I think the way things are now with all the news and stuff, I think they ought to change the law. They ought to add some things to the law, like if you work in government, if you work for the police department or any civic, you cannot lie. If you get caught lying because you sworn an oath to a higher standard, you're going to get prosecuted to the extent of the law. You don't get to say anything that can't be backed up as truth. It'd be interesting to see how that worked out,
Yeah.
But I know, man, the
Uh,
truth will set you somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one picture, want to talk to you about incredible portrait you took of legendary
Oh
photographer.
man,
But
that was that day is with me all the time.
Gordon
So,
Parks, legendary photographer. Yeah.
man,
What was
you want to
the story
go
behind
ahead.
this? Yeah.
I I ended up being on retainer for this this group that was born out of the Watts riots in the 60s. There was a guy that worked at the auto industry and he got funding to start Watts Labor Community Action Committee. And they helped with education and funding and training in South Central. You go there and learn a trade, or you learn how to repair cars. And so and it's funny enough, in the 70s when I was working for IBM, I used to go there and fix their IBM typewriters.
Wow.
And
Yes.
so this picture was taken in 1997. And so like 2 years before that, there was a black chef in LA that had one of the number one restaurants. His name was Robert Gadsby.
Mhm.
And he actually was funded by WCAC, and he would go train kids to cook. He's a black English student. And so I met him and I did the first picture he ever liked of himself. And it was an LA magazine. It was very zen-like, a black and white shot. And everybody just went nuts when they saw it. And so we became friends. And he literally he was to food what I was to photography. He learned to cook all over the world. He learned to cut sushi. He learned spices. He learned to be charcuterie, meat, cutting. He learned to cook fish. I mean, it was crazy. And he's still alive, and he's something else. So he goes, "Hey man, I got to go down to WCAC and teach a class. Come with me." So I went. So I went. Had always had a Hasselblad on my shoulder with a lens on it, wide angle lens, and there was this statue that I saw, and the sun hit it just right. I whipped the camera out, took a couple of shots, and I decided I would go back down there and try to show somebody to see if they had a use for it. And I walk in, they took me to the office, and it was the head lady. Her name was Terry Watkins, Terrell Watkins, and I call her, Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz. Terry was a black version of her. I called her the Good Witch, Terrell Watkins. She was magic.
Mm.
She was walking positivity. She got stuff done. And she said, "I watched you the day You walked up and took a picture of that statue. He said, I've been trying to get somebody to take a good picture of that statue for 4 years. I saw you snap that thing and walk away. She said, I'm gonna put you on retainer. I'll pay your day rate. I don't care what it is. I'll call you. And so she started calling me for jobs. And so she called me. She said, get down here. I got Gordon Parks coming to speak to the graduating class of Verbum Day. And I was shaking because I said, Gordon Parks. He was the first mentor that I never met that mentored me, from reading his work and what he said and I could tell who he was. I said, boy, I sure hope he is in person like he is in print in these pictures I see he's done. And man, he turned out to be that guy.
Mm.
I saw him, I said, Mr. Parks, when you get done speaking to these boys, I said, first off, I can't believe I'm standing in front of you. He said, oh man, here's my number. He pulled out a pen and wrote his number down. And he said, call me. He wasn't kidding.
Wow.
Later on, I called him. We talk on the phone, long conversations. And I gave it up to a friend of mine. He called him and talked to him. And so I said, I got an idea for a shot. So I have other pictures of him. Nobody's ever seen him. I've never really printed the other ones, but this one.
Yeah.
So I took a chair outside. Thank God we had overcast days.
Yeah.
When you have to shoot somebody outside, you want clouds in the sky. You don't want the sun shining.
As rare in LA to get cloudy days.
Yeah, a nice flat day. And, you better bring some strobe maybe. And so I always carried a little TTL strobe with my Hasselblad, worked on TTL too, so you could dial it up and down through the lens lighting for those that don't know. And so I put the chair down and then I motioned for the boys to come closer, and he's standing up. And then he sat down. First, he sat down. He was so classy and stylish. He sits down, fixes his collar, crosses his legs, leans back, smiles, looks at me, and says, you ready? I go, yeah. I look through the lens. He lifts his fist, and
Damn.
They all lifted their fists without saying a word. I snapped 2 shots.
Damn.
And I've made history because this shot has gotten me in more doors about this man. He was everything that people say about him and more. And he also understood the world, who he was, and where he was in the world. And that is what's known as ubiquity. And the Latin word for ubiquity is ubiquitous. And that's on my business cards. Yeah. And my thing is ubiquity. And I'm kind of that photographer where I like everything. I'm able to see it all, and I pick what I want to shoot, and I shoot it, and I don't think about it. And later on, when I look at some of the pictures, either on film or the files, I don't think much of them, but I don't throw anything away. Because a lot of times my subconscious vision was correct. I've looked at negatives I shot and never printed years later, and I go, wow, I love this. My head was on straight. So I have most of my digital files. I catalog everything and put it away. I can find most of it. 99% of it I can find. But yeah, man, I ended up meeting Muhammad Ali at the same spot 2 years earlier and got to hang out with him. I got an amazing picture of him. I ended up getting a job where I ended up having a 7-year job shooting jazz for Lionel Hampton. So I got to meet and hang out with a bunch of guys. So the thing with this was Howard Bingham, Muhammad Ali's photographer, wonderful man, and knew Howard. And Howard had a major exhibition that Kodak funded at WCAC. And so I was wondering, where am I going to shoot Muhammad? And so before the press got there, I saw this big print. The print was about 7 feet long. And I said, he's going to come by here. So I had that's a wide angle 40 millimeter lens, which is like a 24, 25 on a 35. I had my flash on the camera, dialed down a little bit. And so at first I didn't think much of this picture because of that video camera from a news guy, but I was taller than him. And so when he came, I got to snap 2 shots before the press got in the way. And this is the shot I like the most, you know. And I got to hang out with him and shadow box with him. He was shadow boxing with me. He had Parkinson's.
Yeah.
It wasn't as bad as it ended up being later on in his life, but I just looked at him and I said, "You're the only one I would love to be able to tell people that you knocked me out." He laughed. He was really, really nice. You know, the other picture is him screaming at the picture, and Howard's got his head bent down. Howard has a Howard Bingham has his head down. So wait a minute, that's let's see, that picture with the birds go up. Yeah, that's called the blessing. That's the 40 millimeter wide angle. Somebody was feeding pigeons, and
Mm-hmm.
that bird floated down in the frame. And you talk about sometimes you just got to be lucky.
Yep.
I call that the blessing.
That's amazing.
You
Um,
know,
you've done this one series for years, your coffee cup
coffee
series.
cups, man. Yeah, that's been
Yeah.
going on
What?
since 1989.
Yeah. This is.
So that's what the cup looks like now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been dropped twice. It looks. I got cracks and scars on me like that cup, and I like the cup now the way it looks. So when the coffee cup thing started jumping out and Starbucks was starting to be a thing, I'd go to Starbucks and I start watching people, and I would watch them how they talked and shared news. That was taken in Vienna a year ago with a
Mm-hmm.
wide angle lens in my hotel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and that's what the cup look. That's the famous. That's the analog, no Photoshop picture, and it is floating. So what happened was I watched this girl. She was having a moment, real anxiety, and she left a cup. When she left this cup in the middle of a round table at a coffee house called the Ministry in Los Angeles. And I photographed that cup when she left. And I decided I'm going to document what people leave on tables, and I'm not going to change anything. So I
Mm-hmm.
spent the next few years, just snapping pictures of cups people left on tables, the trash, the lipstick on cups, you know. And a lot of times I was hoping the lighting was good, you know. I especially liked it when I got one by a window because, the window light's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people would be in the picture, but very often not. And then what was it? That was 89. In 2004 or five, was it? Yeah, it was later. It was like, I'm gonna start shooting cup. I was in Holland, and oh, it was before I got sick. Yeah, it was 2022. It was 2000. 2000, yeah. Um, that cup was at my buddy worked at a coffee house in Delft, Holland, which is 40 minutes outside. That cup and saucer and a spoon. I had a spoon somewhere still in the saucer. Um, he was working there, and I bought a latte and I drank it. I said, "Man, I love this cup." He said, "Put it in your pocket." So I did, and that cup became, there's yin and yang. There's control and uncontrolled, and uncontrolled is you shoot them as you see them, and the other thing is always posed and controlled. So the cup is always posed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's always in my bag, but I don't always pull it out and shoot it. So I put that cup as being seen all over the world now. You know, I'm getting, when I meet someone famous and we get to a point where, we're kind of cool, I get them to hold it. I take a shot, and um, I'm sad. I didn't ever bother to get any of the jazz guys hold it. And I wished I had now but I got some jazz portraits of some of the guys I became personal friends with some of the big greats. And every time I came to town, I'd go by and hang out, and I got told stories and I got to shoot. Um, got some really cool stuff that way too. But I published, this is the first book.
Oh, nice. Let me pop off here. Oh, really cool. Is that still available if people want to buy one?
Yeah, I'll send you the links
Mm-hmm.
to this. This doesn't have a back cover. That's the cup. And then I designed it so coffee cups. You open it in the middle and turn it around. This is called double shot.
Nice.
And it's it's $35, and you You buy it and they ship it to you, and it's all black and white. It's film and digital. And then this is the second book, it's Triple Shot. It's normal. There's a back cover with this one. This is called Triple Shot,
Damn.
and that's the back cover.
So what is it about the cup? Like you said, you carry that cup with you everywhere you go. Is it like the coffee cup like represents something to you, or like what is it that keeps you wanting to keep carrying that thing around and photographing it?
Oh man, coffee and tea. Coffee is a community. Everybody drinks coffee.
Hmm.
People will go to a coffee shop and talk.
Yep.
They'll talk, they'll learn stuff. I mean, less now because these idiots are now stuck on their phones, which is kind of fun. They'll go to a coffee shop with friends. Let's meet and hang out, each on their phone, not even looking at each other.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
kind of funny.
yeah.
But yeah, you learned your news. In the old days, you heard the first news, whether a truth or a lie, was shared around a campfire and some coffee. Coffee's community.
Hmm.
Um, Coffee is humanity. You know, it's it's everybody drinks coffee, and if they don't, they used to.
Yep.
You know, Starbucks is. I sent a really nice. I spent money at Blurred Books to make a really nice one of these,
Hmm.
and I sent this to them. I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
I had to call them, and I got the guy on the phone, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got it. Let me give you a name to call." And I was like, "Wow, you got." I was like, "The premier coffee place in the world doesn't think that someone has been shooting coffee." And this was back in 2015, and
Hmm.
I've been doing this since '89. You don't think that it's not interesting that a guy's going around with a cup and shooting cups all over the world? Well, on a train in Berlin in like 2015. It was winter time and I was going back to Amsterdam from Berlin. I think it's a 2 hour ride, 2 hour ride, something like that. And I got in a first class car with this guy and the sun came out and I took the cup out and I put it, where's about the picture should be in here. And I put it on the table next to him and he had his phone out. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I shoot this cup all over the world." I said, "I took it from a coffee house in Delft, Holland." And he gasped and goes, "I'm the chairman of the architecture historical department in TU Delft University." He said, "That's fascinating." He goes, how long you been in Amsterdam?" I said, "A week." He said, "Come see me." And so I did. I went to go see Cor Wagner, who he showed me the school. I don't know if it's in here. Showed me the school and lovely university. I said, "I'll go to art school. I want to go to that one." And he says, "This is fascinating. You and these pictures." And he said, "I like your work. Use all kinds of stuff. It's not in here."
Oh, okay.
But so he goes, "We publish books." And I was going, "That'd be cool." And so he says, "I want to do an exhibition. Give me some time." 3 years later, I was in Berlin having an exhibition. Got an email. "Frank Core, how you doing, man?" He says, "I finally got two students I can trust, and I want to I want them to, you talk to them about arranging an exhibition here. I'll pay all your expenses." And he says, "We have a big space." And she said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think it's great." I said, "How about this?" I said, "I do this thing I call at sea level, like at sea level. You're on your
Hmm.
own thing." And I said, "I'm about everything, people, places, things, and coffee cups." So I said, "I'll do half the show of people, places, and things in black and white." And I made the print, and the other half will be all coffee cups. And I filled the place up. And the girls, I used to talk to them on WhatsApp, and we had ideas. And so they said, "We got this idea. What do you think of?" Because we can't put holes in the wall. So we're going to put string. She said, "We're going to rent coffee cups, hang the coffee cup at the bottom of the string 3 inches off the ground so the string won't go back and forth. You clip the prints on the string." They did it. So
Nice.
when I got there, I took 95 13 by 19 black and white prints I made. And the thing about me and working with curators is if you're a good curator, I'll let you hang it unless I'm real adamant. I'll let you hang the show you where you want. They
Hmm.
said, "You trust us?" I said, "Yeah, I trust you." "He trusts you?" "I trust you." I said, "Here's a box of prints. Knock yourself out." They loved it,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean,
And so,
that just shows you with photography. You start shooting cups or anything, it's just like crazy doors can open and an amazing experience you've had just from photographing coffee cups of all things.
and I tell all young photographers, you want to be attached to a university because they always find funding for stuff.
Mm.
Yes, and if you make them look good, they're gonna call you again. And you want to be in group shows that universities sponsor. I mean, man, you end up in people's catalog, you get called for stuff. I ended up getting a gig. I learned how to shoot cars professionally, with hot lights and
Yeah.
long exposure color slide film.
Damn.
And they looked like candy. I was shooting chrome. I know how to make chrome sing,
Yeah.
you know. And I ended up getting a job where I had to shoot custom motorcycles for AAA and light them with strobe. And the art director, when they got the files, they were like, "Man, we don't have to retouch these," you know. Um, and I'm quick, The bad thing, the thing I got to the point where I stopped charging day rates. I start charging creative fees.
Hmm.
You pay me for when the job's done,
Yeah.
you know. So, but no, a lot of people don't even know I shoot color film and color. I learned color with film. I carry an X-Rite Macbeth passport color checker in my camera bag. Because I'm shooting some video too now. And
Yeah.
this is a Hahnemuhle blank journal,
Hmm.
and it's got stickers that they used to give kids from Trader Joe's for eyes. I
Yeah.
call this the See for Yourself book. This is mixed media.
Okay.
I've been working on this since 2015. Look how fat it is.
What is it
It's
like?
got drawings,
Okay.
pictures,
Yeah.
words. Every time I show this to someone,
Yeah.
they lose their minds. The professor saw it. He said that needs to be in the book. So there's pictures start out like this, you know,
Yeah.
and then there's there's words, there's poems I've written, like, you know,
Wow.
little, little stickman figures and stuff. There's intricate little art pieces in here. There's there's pictures of me and my dad in here. I bought this antique print at a swap meet in Europe, and it says uh down here, little thing says, "Are you my grandpa?" And he says 9. I wrote 9 on it, like
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got all kinds of little tchotchke stuff in here. Yeah, I wrote need versus wants. If you want what you need, you may no longer need to want what you want.
Hmm.
Little silly stuff like that.
No, it's
It's not
good.
always about your color. Maybe it's you. Not always racism, you know?
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, here's a shot. So that's my dad 6 months before he died. I took that shot of him he was living in Barron Springs, Michigan. And
Wow.
that's a shot I did of myself. And there's a shot of the guy at a diner, and I call it, what if I wrote Father, Son, Moon, you know, glued the pictures in. Um, I was in Barcelona getting a cafe con leche, and that's the waiter
Oh
pouring
wow.
the coffee. And then the bottom is a shot of him pouring the coffee into the people I was with.
Damn. We we need the Frank.
Barcelona.
We need the Frank book, man. That's what we need next.
After everyone says it's got to get in. I wrote this. This was so Freestyle had featured me, and I was on the cover of their magazine for the photo store. And they said, "We need a quote for you." And I got the email on the train. I was on my way to I was going to from Paris is going to Amsterdam on a train. And so the train speeding along. So I sat and wrote. Years ago, I set out to conquer a world, slay dragons, and right some wrongs. Those dragons are now all vegans. The world I'm learning to conquer is me, and it's becoming more about who's left and who's right. I'm simply happy to become the sum of my moments.
Hmm.
Frank Jackson on paper and in print.
That's
You
great.
know, it's I found out that I'm actually a pretty decent writer, and I write some poems and I write small short essays. You know, um, yeah, this poem. This is called Go. Go here, see there, wander wide, no corner cut. Go to be gone. Make your past a face in the crowd. Go because it's all behind you now. Go and take the long way home. And that's the shot of the coffee cup in Amsterdam, shot with my Leica
Wow.
at
Uh,
the station.
no,
And I
that's inc-
shot with there.
no, that's incredible. I like the journal and this kind of the mix of everything. It's really, really
Yeah,
creative.
I won't bore you with more of this stuff, but
No,
um,
no,
this
that's
travels. This travels with me. Oh yeah, it's me drawing. I drew that with a fountain pen, but I'm known for the stick figures. So
uh,
my
this,
friends saw me draw these stick figures.
this,
And look, this book is called Between the Lines. I drew this in middle 90s, and it's a book of little stick men doing all kinds of stuff. And it was a
it's come full circle. At the beginning of the interview, you're talking
this
about
book
how,
is
yeah,
words and pictures, a little anyway. That
yeah,
yeah,
but
it's a life that I'm happy I'm alive, man.
yeah, yeah. I guess that's a good way to wrap up. I mean, like
Yeah,
you've been at this for a long time, man. Like, what's next? What's got you still excited about photography and anything you're kind of hoping to work on moving forward? I guess.
I'm still alive. My eyes are open.
Yep.
And then when it's time to close them, I hope whatever God out there has kept me alive, because not only did disease try to kill me, I rode a Vespa around for a few years and I got knocked off of two of those and walked away from them both times.
Yeah.
You know, Something's keeping me alive. I hope that I own up to it. Somebody asked me if I was a good man, and I said I can't answer that. I said I'm trying to do better than I did before. I said anybody that tells you they're a good man, you should run like hell,
Mhm.
because anybody that says that, it can't be true. You know. But yeah, man. Anyway, it was great to speak with you.
Yeah. No, thank you, Frank. I really enjoyed it, man. I could talk to
You're
you
gonna have
forever.
fun editing this, I'm sure. You
Nah,
got
nah.
got
That's
your work
great.
cut out for you now.
Nah, thank you so much. And then once I get it up here, I'll link everyone. They can go check out your work. But thanks so much.
Oh no, thank you, man. All right.
So there you have it. That was the Frank Jackson interview. Just want to thank Frank so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It was a really amazing conversation about his journey of photography and everything that he's accomplished. Like I said at the beginning, it's like a true artist who just can photograph anything and just turn it into a work of art, and kind of really inspires me to approach photography and this, don't overlook even this the everyday things. So real pleasure talking to Frank. Definitely go check out Frank's website at photographs.com. You can follow him on Instagram at photographs. I'll put the link in the description, but definitely go give him a follow. He's always sharing cool work that he's posting up on there. So definitely check that out. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you use the promo code BANTER, you'll get 2 months free of PicDrop.com. It's a great image transfer tool that I've been using myself for 5 years, so I can't recommend it enough. Just go over to PicDrop.com, enter the promo code BANTER, and you get 2 months free. And as always, thanks so much for listening. And we got more episodes coming. If you aren't subscribed to the YouTube page, you can go check that out. I've been uploading all the video versions over there. So definitely go give us a like, subscribe. All that would be much appreciated. And yeah, take care.